I think Baharin talked about a lot of different things, right? And I think one of the things that struck me the most is this, I think, almost Kafka-esque idea of where, the stateless people are have to confront with this mind-boggling array of bureaucracy, right? They have to navigate through this maze of legal and institutional challenges, right? Which brings us, of course, to Dr. Rodziana's area of expertise. Dr. Rodziana, what do you think are essentially the legal and institutional landscape of, that governs citizenship and statelessness in Malaysia? Because I think we've looked at the lived experience of stateless people in Malaysia from Cikgu Rahayu's response just now. I think it would be quite illuminating if we can take a step back and understand, why are these people why is it so challenging for them, right? Why is it so challenging for them to access education and other basic public services? What kind of laws are in place that govern this space? And I think it would be quite useful for us to understand that as background knowledge.
Okay, thank you, Syazwan, for the question. Hi, everyone. I'm Rodziana, and I teach law at one of the local public universities here. And statelessness is one of my niche areas of research, aside from migration and also refugee-related studies. When I embarked on this research many years back, I look at things from top down. That was my approach. Being trained as a lawyer, I think I like a lot of skills that social scientists usually have. So I remember when I went to Sabah, I was very direct with my questions when I approach stateless persons, and I gradually learned that there's a lot of sensitivities and nuances that people like me really have to learn. So thank you, Dr. Rahayu, for always educating me, people like me, about the richness of the stories. I wanted to go back to the question just now, basically I want to start off with the origin of the problem, right? People look at statelessness as something that is produced and manufactured by racism, for instance. What are other factors at play and the nuances? Yeah? So if you look at the history, this issue was actually an issue that was focused on Europe, right? Where statelessness affected the post-World War refugees who were displaced after the World Wars. And 16 years on, the phenomenon and the context in which statelessness arises has tremendously changed, right? So I will give you some figures, and I want you to reflect on this. Yeah. So according to UNHCR handbook 2014, most stateless persons have never crossed borders and find themselves in their own country. And if we look at 2022 figures issued by UNHCR, of 4.4 million that were reported stateless or of unclean nationality, 1.3 were stateless and displaced, which accounts for only 30% of the known stateless and displaced. So who's the 70% of that, right? So, and also interestingly, now that data also reveals that this is a global issue with an Asian epicenter. Right? So what does this mean? So I will go back to the stories that you brought up, including about Wong, right? So Wong's story actually depicts probably the less manifest ways in which statelessness may arise. Yeah, we often look at statelessness as something that is produced by or perpetuated by the limitations of physical bodies, right? But Wong is not actually manufactured a stateless person that is manufactured by these limitations. He was a born stateless person. He was born to a Malaysian father, married to a non-citizen mother, right? And what made him stateless was because of the inability to produce the parents' marriage certificate, right? By right, if you follow the logic of jus sanguinis, which is a dominant citizenship regime in the country, you shouldn't be a stateless person, right? So this is also some of the colonial impacts of inheriting citizenship laws that are very driven by jus sanguinis doctrine, which is actually based on not only your blood ties, but also blood ties to your parents, but also the status of your parents' citizenship and the status of the marriage of your parents, right? So, so back to his story, right? So his case represents the 70% of the stateless populations that we often ignore. These are homegrown stateless people. We are not talking about foreigners. We are talking about people born here who have never lived out who have lived out their entire lives in Malaysia, right? So there's a lot of misconception about statelessness being an issue that's associated with foreign people coming into the country, right? So we have to sort of like have this perception corrected. We have evidence and figures, and in fact, the Ministry of Home Affairs also alludes to this scale of the problem among children born to parents whose marriages are not formally registered, children who are born out of wedlock. And so again, we have to look at the multifaceted nature of borders. So we are not only looking at how physical borders can sort of produce this phenomenon, but also how internal and psychological borders also play a huge role in perpetuating statelessness. So by internal border, we can refer to how our citizenship regime and regulations have weaknesses and are shaped by gender, religion, culture, and identity, through the role of the state in sort of designing a framework that is not inclusive for all. Yeah. So Malaysian Brunei, for instance, we still have explicit gender discriminatory laws, right? And in Malaysia, it applies both to children born to parents whose marriages are not properly registered according to the law, as well as to children of Malaysian women married to foreign husbands and have children overseas. Yeah, so this is the aspects of gender discriminatory laws that we still have in our federal constitution, right? And it's also interesting to look at the psychological borders, the borders that we construct in our mind, and how it shapes our mindset and attitudes towards people that we deem as undeserving, as foreign burdens to the economy, so on and so forth. Yeah. And how that perpetuates discrimination, which can be expressive and less blatantly manifested. So we look at discrimination as direct and indirect. The indirect discrimination is how the law that seems to be, for instance, protective of the rights of these people are being implemented and practiced. For instance, I take a very simple but very common example of how exclusion is created by the lack of access to birth registration, okay, by children who are marginalized, children who are born to refugees and stateless persons because of the lack of documentation. Although in our law we say that every child must be registered, so we conform to the universality of birth registration, which is the international standard on birth registration. But in practice, the indirect, less manifested ways of discriminating people is something that we often overlook. Right? We don't speak much about this, but this is very very real reason behind why we have so many cases of children who are unable to access citizenship and to access consequential rights, right, of citizenship. I think I'll stop at that.